Alright guys, good to see everybody. So we're going to be working on taking the back this week. So we generally separate taking the back with back control because honestly they are two vastly different topics. Taking the back is the way that we get on people's backs, and then back control is when we're on the back, how do we stop them from escaping? So our focus this week is going to be taking the back. Now we're going to be starting off with probably the most important back take movement, that being the arm drag. Okay? The arm drag is how we expose the back to force our opponent to turn so that we can get on the back. Now, if we think about all of the sweeps that we've been looking at recently, our systemized sweeps in this class have been done from the seated guard. So, for example, if Coach Seth is on his feet, I have a lot of great sweeping options from here. Okay? I could go for my dummy sweep. I could go for my hook sweep. I could go for my shin sweep. I could go for my double ankle. I could go for my shin to shin. I could go for my ankle pick. I could go for single leg X. And that's our sweeping system that we've been working on over the past couple months in this class, right? Here's where oftentimes people can fall into a bit of a predicament. The problem being, I have all these awesome sweeps that I can do against this standing opponent, which again is most common in jiu-jitsu. Most commonly, my opponent's going to pass on their feet, which is why we're preparing for sweeping against the standing opponent. But what if my opponent does this? And he sits. Now, all of those sweeps that I've been working on have suddenly gone out the window. Okay? Hook sweep, double ankle sweep, dummy sweep, single leg X. I cannot do any of them. Of course, I could start going to a recumbent guard, go on my back, and start playing off my back. But what if I don't want to do that? I want to be in the seated guard, right? When I'm in the seated guard, this is an awesome position. It's so difficult for him to pass because my back's not on the floor yet. So let's add another piece to our sweeping system, that being the arm drag. I'm going to demonstrate the arm drag, and then we're going to break it down. Okay, guys? So here we go. So what we're doing is we're attacking the arm drag from the seated guard, and we're finishing on our opponent's back. That's where you guys just did your warm-up drill from. Right here. So first things first. When I'm trying to take somebody's back, I'm going to look to internally rotate their shoulder to create back exposure, and then I'm going to look to create what we call a chest to spine connection. Now, the first part is rotating the shoulder, and that's the hardest part. That's where the arm drag is going to come in. So starting from our seated guard here, if you're unfamiliar, the seated guard is where we're sitting on our bottom. We have a concept called headlights, and the headlights are the knees. My headlights, or my knees, are constantly shining on my opponent. If my headlights are not shining on my opponent, he's no longer in my guard. So I always want my knees facing him, and I always want to keep my hands up, ready to grab, okay? So in this situation, my opponent is sat down. We're going to immediately attack the arm drag. We're going to start off by getting lever control on our opponent's arm. Generally, if you're right-handed, generally you're going to lead with your left. So it's kind of like a jab. Now, I could grab the wrist, but the problem with grabbing the wrist is that it's a very easy grip to break. He can just circle his hand out, and I'm going to lose it. We are not allowed to grab individual digits in jiu-jitsu, so the most efficient grip is going to be grabbing the hand. I'm actually going to grab the entire hand itself, aiming to get my forefingers in what we call the meat of the thumb. That's the big thick pad right here. I'm grabbing my forefingers right here. I'm allowed to grab the hand. I'm not allowed to grab the digits. So just a quick reminder on that. So I'm grabbing that hand. And the reason I want to grab the hand like this is because this is a harder grip to break, and it offers me more rotational control over my opponent's arm. If you've ever seen like Steven Seagal do like his Aikido wrist locks and stuff like that, this is what he's using, okay? Now this works as opposed to that. So I'm grabbing again the wrist. No one? All right. So I'm grabbing the wrist. Don't worry, we trained in Aikido, so we can say that. I grab his wrist. I'm going to start creating a frame out of this arm. What I don't want to do when I'm arm dragging is I don't want it to devolve into a strength battle, okay? And what that would look like is this. I go for an arm drag, he goes for an arm drag, and now let's see who's stronger. And you get into like this tug of war type thing. You're wasting your time, okay? Again, we're trying to be as efficient and biomechanically sound as possible. So again, I get that control in the hand here. I'm going to create a frame first, pushing my hand right into his hip. This is going to create this bend in his elbow. We're going to be accessing this as a ratchet lever, and a ratchet lever is just one lever that affects another lever. So in this case, by reaching my hand in and hooking the back of his tricep, as I pull this arm to me, notice what happens to the shoulder. it creates internal rotation. And that starts to create back exposure. So contrast that with what most people try to do when they arm drag. Just pulling really hard. That'll work if I'm way stronger than this guy, but that should never be our litmus test. Our litmus test should always be, can I be as technically proficient as possible? So again, our setup is just going to be the beginning here, guys. Controlling the hand, frame against the hip. I'm going to reach my dominant hand, so I'm right-handed, so I'll reach my dominant hand in, hook the back of the tricep. Now, as I pull this arm towards me, Coach Seth is going to fall forward. I'm going to get out of his way. So as I'm pulling him towards me, I'm going to pull my hand out. I'm going to post my left hand and my left foot out to the side. Now, I'm going to scoot around and get my chest. I'll show this from a different view in a moment, and get my chest right on his back right here, okay? Notice I'm not coming up on top right yet. I'm still on my hip. I'm just keeping my chest heavy against his shoulders. All right, so we'll do this from a different angle. Starting in the seated guard, okay? We can be playing hand fighting here. Once I get the grip I'm looking for, frame, hook the elbow, post 1, post 2. This post allows me to kick and move my weight forward a little bit faster. If I'm not very mobile while on my bottom like this, I can use this leg to kick myself forward, making it way easier to move. So again, I'm kicking that leg and dragging his elbow to where I used to be. As soon as we're here, my chest is just going to come up and I'm going to hug his hips just like this. Don't worry about taking the back. Just stop right here, because what we're trying to do is we're trying to understand how to control positions, not just how to rush through and get somewhere. So this is a position that I need you guys to be able to control. All right, if we rotate again here, slow motion, control the hand, frame, hook the elbow, kick, pull, finish. Okay, I'm still on my butt, my chest is against his back, and we're done here. All right, I'll show one more time from the other angle, this time without talking. Here we go. Okay, again, chest is heavy, and now I'm ready to start attacking the back. Does anybody need to see it again? Just this initial setup here, okay? So, yep, I got you, Kez. I want you guys to, for those of you who have done this before, start engaging with the grip fight first, and then look for the timing of the punch and pull, okay? So I'll demonstrate again here. So again, I might start with the grip fight, not letting him gain lever access on my ankles, because that's what he's gonna be looking for, okay? I get the hand, punch, pull, kick, and drag. Alrighty, guys? Any questions? Yes, Josh.
That time you had your feet under his legs. Is that where you wanted to be, or did you dig back away from it?
Sure, yeah, so feet vary, okay? Some people are comfortable keeping their legs out like this. Some people are able to pull them in really tight like this. It doesn't really matter, okay? What's important is that my hands are defending my ankles, because I don't want to keep my hands back like this, because now he's going to grab my ankles and flip me on my back, and now I'm playing recumbent guard whether I like it or not. So wherever my feet are, my hands are above them, okay? My hands are always here, so that way as he goes to grab my ankles, I can block and intercept, boom, and then that starts setting up the arm drag. All right, guys, so let's just go one for one. If you'd like to, you can move up a little bit, like 3 times, and then switch, because this is a pretty quick motion. All right, 1, 2. Let's add in a couple pieces here, and then we're actually gonna take the back. So that's kind of what our goal is. So a couple notes that I was talking to some groups about is keeping the elbow controlled. Let's rotate this way, actually. As I arm drag, I wanna keep this elbow boxed in using my body. So we're landing on elbows here. So some of us are landing like this. Notice this big gap between his elbow and my chest. This is plenty of space for him to limp arm and bring his arm back in between us, okay? I wanna keep this arm across my center line, so I'm using my chest to kind of keep it in place. The other part of this are his hips. As I drag Coach Seth forward, I understand that he's probably gonna try to go backwards. So if I don't have a frame behind his hips, he's gonna drive his weight back. So as I drag him forward, my left knee is framing behind his butt. So now there's this frame to prevent him from sitting backwards. Again, this is gonna help you control this preliminary position before we start taking the back, okay? So again, those notes that I noticed were I drag, and as I'm dragging, my chest is covering that arm, and I'm dropping to my elbow here. My left knee, this one right here, is straight up here, right against his bottom. So that way it's a wedge. He can't sit back down, and I'm going to keep him forward. Granted, guys, you're not going to sit here for very long because we're taking the back. Here's what, if we back up a smidgen, here's what most people assume you're going to do. Most people assume you're going to do something like this. Okay? And we say this every single class. That is going to work on a white belt, and that's it. Okay? That's going to work on someone who has no idea what they're doing. Why? The reason it's going to work on them and no one else is because as I go to start to climb up, what am I relinquishing? Control. I'm giving up control to get my body up and over him. So he's just going to spin out, and now I end up in his guard. So against a, brand new white belt, go for it. You can just throw that hook in because they don't understand when that control comes off their body, so they're not going to understand when to turn out and regard. Let's not prepare ourselves for someone who doesn't know what they're doing. We're preparing ourselves against a skilled opponent. So I need to think of our alignment, base, posture, and structure. I'm going to start breaking those aspects down on him so that I can offset his center of gravity to pull his hips into me as opposed to me having to go to him. So the first thing I'm going to do, I've already broken his base because he's leaning forward. I've already broken his structure because I've separated this arm and pulled it across my center line. Now I need to start to offset his base. Okay, his posture is leaning forward. I need to offset his base. If I just try to pull Coach Seth right now, his knees are wide enough and his elbows are on the mat, that's going to be difficult to make him move. I'm just going to pull here. Yeah, he can just kind of get low. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to use my left leg, the one that's here right behind his bottom, to access his leg closest to me as a lever to pull it out, opening up his base. Now, as I start to hip escape backwards on my elbow, I'm going to be kind of pulling him over top of that disrupted base, and it's going to be very difficult for him to stay here on his knees. I cannot do this, though. I can't roll over, because when I roll over, now he's just going to lay down on top of me. It's not the end of the world, but I'm not really close to getting on his back. I'm just going to start hip escaping, butt scooting, straight backwards as I pull on this ankle and pull on his hip. So his hips drop down in my lap. Notice I'm still on my elbow here because I'm still keeping this elbow across my center line. Now, once we're here in this position, now it's okay to lay on that shoulder so I can get my hooks and my seatbelt. And notice how we immediately end up on the overhook side? That means we can immediately start attacking the rear naked choke if that's something you're familiar with. Okay? So let's pick up where we left off. Frame, pull, kick, drag. Good frame here, capping off that shoulder. Now I can't just pull him towards me, so I'm going to take my left foot and I'm going to hook over his ankle, okay? How about we rotate a little bit? So my left foot, the one that's behind his bottom here, is going to step over. I'm going to hook that ankle, and look, guys, I'm going to access this as a lever and open it up, okay? One more time, I'm here. Okay, and now I can start pulling his hips towards me as I scoop my hips backwards. Try not to lean apart like this because you're giving him too much space. Keep your chest close. Use your active toes on the right to drive. Pull his hips down. And now that we're here, I already have one hook. I can immediately seatbelt, and I can throw in the top hook. All right, I'll show it again with a little bit more speed. Grip fighting, punch, pull, kick, drag. Open the lever, hips out, take the back. Okay, again from this perspective, slow motion. Okay, guys, does anybody need to see it again?
No, sir.
Any questions?
Are you grabbing a belt when you're doing this?
You can, but remember, we like to kind of keep things both applicable for gi and no gi, so I'm going to get the most bang for my buck if I'm just hooking his hip here, okay? Again, I can grab the belt. That's totally fine. But if I hook the hip, this is direct control as opposed to this proxy control, because look at this. Coach Seth's belt. See how loose it is? Might not actually be the best thing to grab onto because if I start to pull it, it's going to rotate, you see? But if it's a really tight belt, sure. But in this case, I'm just going to hook. I'm going to kind of get my fingers hooked like right in his hip bone, right? I know, anatomically where somebody's hip bones are, so I'm going to grab that hip bone as I open and pull his hips down. Make sense? All righty, guys, on to 1, 2. All right, guys, does anybody have any questions so far? This is looking great. I just want to touch on a couple of concepts that may help you guys out. The first one being the placement of our feet as we're dragging. So with this particular arm drag, I want to keep one foot in between his legs the entire time. And the reason for that is because this is going to become a hook. If I drag and both of my feet are outside, as I pull him, now I'm just basically letting him pass my guard because now my legs are no longer in the picture. So that's like a worst case scenario. I need to have one foot in between his legs because that's going to be our first hook. As I drag, his body weight is over top of this leg. So now, as I pull him, and I'm not going to do it super technically, but just as I pull him, look, here's my first hook. You see, it's already there. It was waiting to just slide up and go right into his thigh. Some of us were having some difficulty getting a good chest to spine connection because as we were pulling our partner, we were starting to drop down too early. So it goes along with what I was saying initially, guys. Don't let your back touch the floor. If I'm here, now I'm kind of looking up at him. When I'm taking someone's back, I should be looking down at them. You know what I mean? So if you need a little bit more height, build up to that left hand or the right hand here. Okay, because now as I start to do my hip escape backwards, I open this. As I start to hip escape backwards, now his hips fall, and again, I'm over top of him. Look at how easy it's going to be to put my chest on his spine now. Versus if I hip escape and I'm underneath him, now it's a uphill battle. Literally, I got to try to go up to get him. Okay, so let gravity help you. So I'm pulling, and I'm on top of him. Before we look at our last little variation, which is going to be a slight adjustment of the hooks, I want to mention what the top person should be trying to avoid. When I'm doing an arm drag to somebody, the thing that makes my day is when they just face plant and they just lay flat on their stomach like this. Now, granted, no one good is going to do this, but don't make the mistake of doing this, okay? If you ever lay flat on your belly in jiu-jitsu, you're probably doing something wrong. There's never a time in jiu-jitsu, okay? There's never a time in jiu-jitsu where you need to lay on your belly. Never say never, but for your case, there is never a time in jiu-jitsu where you need to lay on your belly. Because why? If he lays on his belly, I'm just going to go belly down, back mount. And now I can hit him and just start choking him, or I'm just going to put my hooks in and just kind of make his life miserable, okay? This is the worst possible position you can be in jiu-jitsu. So our rule of thumb is never let your stomach touch the floor, okay? That means as I drag him, he's going to use his arms as frames to prevent himself from going down, okay? And this just facilitates my back take because it makes it so that I need to start doing all my technical movements. The last thing that I want to go over, guys, is just going to be one more way to disrupt his base. So let's rotate this way. So I'm here. We first used our left leg, stepping over, gaining lever access, and opening up this leg. This is awesome. Another option that you can utilize, though, is called a twister hook. And a twister hook is just where I use the other foot. But this one is a little bit not trickier, it just requires a little bit more coordination. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my inside leg, I'm going to hook it and try to wrap my toes underneath his ankle. So now, as I start to pull him, I'm extending my right leg forward, okay? And so now, again, it's still your hook, it's still there just as it was before, but as I'm extending this leg, I'm disrupting his base in a different angle. Instead of opening his base up this way, I'm pushing his base inwards, inward rotation as opposed to external rotation, okay? So feel free to add this in. Again, it's very simple. From here, the starting position of the arm drag, I'm hooking over the top with my toes. And this one, you can be a little bit more like robust with the movement. As I push, I'm gonna start kicking that leg out, okay? And almost like kicking his leg out from underneath him. Ideally, I'm gonna get the toes hooked in, not 100% necessary, just extend that lever away from you. And then take the back, throw the other leg in. Play around with either of these options, see which one you prefer. They both work great, guys, okay? So I'll show the entire thing from this perspective real quick. Okay, so I arm drag, I'm here, maybe I don't want to do this, so I'll hook inside here, okay? The reason you might not want to go on the outside like this is because you may want to keep that leg framing behind their butt, okay? I might not necessarily want to take this leg off because then he can sit back really quickly. So if I don't want to give up this control here, I'll use the other foot. Hook, and again, I'm pulling him, and as I'm pulling him, I'm extending that leg out. But notice how I open up this other leg like a catcher's mitt. I don't want him to fall down on top of my leg here, because now this is dangerous, number one, and also he's gonna start passing my guard easier. So open up your leg, and then put the hook on. Okay, one more time without talking. And immediately I get to my seatbelt. And notice, again, guys, I am above him. All right, I don't want to be here underneath. I want to try to be up above him as best as I can. All right, any questions on this? Last little one, guys, and then we'll do our arm drag drill. Okay, 1, 2.